Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, the show where everything is made up and the points don't matter. That's right, the points are like Ralph Northam's opinion after he got caught with blackface. I'm here with Jake from Freedom Scoop and formerly of the Daily Jake today, and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about some topics that are going on throughout the week. We've got a nice array of topics that we are going to go over today. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez released the details of the Green New Deal, and everybody jumped all over it and tried to find some flaws in it. Cortez got herself embroiled in another controversy after she made a speech in front of Congress about campaign finance reform and essentially called all of Congress a bunch of criminals, with the exception of herself, of course, in a brief anecdote that nobody understood. There's been some activity in 2020 Watch. Elizabeth Warren has moved out of the exploratory committee, and Amy Klobuchar cites global warming while she's announcing that she's running for president in the middle of a blizzard. And we're looking at the end of the continuing resolution that would keep the government open right now. And there's been some activity here just at the end of Monday night that goes along with that. So we'll talk about that. It's going to be all this and more in the next hour of Ed's World. Jake?
Hello.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Jake. I've never been in a yearbook and I've never worn blackface. Uh, I think that means that I'm the next governor of Virginia. I don't know if I want that honor, but that's all right. So I'm Jake. I do this and that and the other. Do a little writing. I met a lot of people and I do a lot of stuff. That's about it. That's a good description of me. No, but I currently run freedomscoop.com. I do some other stuff here and there around the internet, like run the Daily Jake. And I don't know, those are kind of on hiatus, but hopefully they'll be picking up soon.
You work with somewhere in government right now, too, do you not?
Well, do I not? Kind of. So I am bouncing between a couple of different political campaigns or contributing to them. So recently I was offered a media position with the Montana Republican Party. And there were some ups and some downs. We're still a little hairy on that. I think I might take it next term. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So I've organized a bunch of big events, like when, for example, when Matt Rosendale was running here in Montana, I worked a lot with him. And yeah, I've done a lot of campaign work and a lot with the Republican National Committee. And I got a cool hat that says nothing in particular. But yeah, I'm just me, basically. I try not to tout all that. I try to tout Ed. I like you.
And I'm very thankful for that because that has gotten me some viewership across Twitter and across the internet. So
Subscribe. Buy Ed's t-shirts. They say make Ed great again.
I don't have any t-shirts yet, but Emily kind of teased when Emily was on the show. She teased that she's got I think she called it a coyote cutter now, that she can make some screen printing now, and she threw around the idea of actually putting the spiral globe on a t-shirt for me. So I don't know if that'll turn out.
Spiral.
Yeah. You know, the one that,
Yeah.
oh, you can't see the background right now, but
No. But it bounces down, and then you got your glasses, your signature glasses. I like them. I think that's perfect. Put that on a t-shirt.
yeah, that's what we were talking about. A couple announcements to go over here. First off, within the last week, Audio Platform is live for all three of the major audio podcast formats. You can find Ed's World on iTunes, on Stitcher, and on Google Play. Sometimes it's easier to listen to a longer form podcast in the audio version than to sit in front of YouTube for an hour. I do appreciate it when you sit in front of YouTube for an hour, but I've decided to make the step to make it easier, and we are live on all three platforms. Jake, do you have any
So
announcements?
download now.
You have any
Like this.
announcements for the general public before we get into the topics?
Announcements. Well, no. I don't think I do, actually. I mean, I have some things, but we'll get into that. We'll hear more. I don't have any strict, specific ticker tape day parade announcement. I wish I did. I mean, that would be super awesome if we were having a parade in my honor or building a statue. But unfortunately, I am not Mao Zedong or, some fascist dictator that Ocasio-Cortez would support. So I don't think I have any announcements right this second. We'll get to those maybe.
Well, speaking of Ocasio-Cortez, the representative, rather, I almost said senator there, the representative from New York came out with the full...
Future senator.
Yeah, oh, God help us for that.
Future. Well, you can't stay representative forever unless you're like Pelosi or something, Eventually you have to move on.
Well, there are a couple around here that have decided to stay representatives forever, so obviously you can. Or at least in
isn't there
Wisconsin
like
you
a
can.
30-term limit or something like that? Like you can only serve for 60 years and then you have to retire?
No,
Is
you
there
can keep
No.
running until you die.
It's like that rant she had the other day where she said, so if I went out and I had super PACs that endorsed me and then I ran for office, then what? And everybody in the room's like, that's kind of what we do. Yes, you're correct. And she's like, look how criminal that is. And they're like, no, actually, that's the law. And she's like, what if you were president and you did that? And they were like, oh, well, don't talk about Barry. Obama hasn't been in office for a couple of years now, So let's not talk about him. Anyways, on to the next speaker. That was pretty much what happened. I don't know if you saw that video. It's hilarious and insane.
Yeah, I saw that. We're actually going to talk about that. If you want to go first with that one, we can move the Green New Deal after that.
No, we can go to the Green New Deal, farting cows, getting rid of airplanes. I don't know. I could do an Arnold impression of get rid of the chopper. I don't know. Something like that. That's what I would go with for Green New Deal.
Well, Representative Cortez came out with the actual text of the Green New Deal that she has been teasing from the moment that she entered the campaign field for the first time. It's a lot of what people thought it was going to be, and there was a lot more in it. I've read the Green New Deal from front to back. I actually made a solo video about it already, but for the most part, it does seem to be an economic shift for us disguised as saving the environment. Have you read the Green New Deal at all?
Well, I think that the Green New Deal needs to change its name. We need to rename it the Brown New Deal because it's full of a lot of Adam Schiff. Shit. The representative, Anyways, it's full of a lot of his policies. They're insane. They're mundane. They, for example, the popular thing, everything everybody's laughing at is farting cows. Okay. The thing is she wrote this, or whoever wrote this, whether it be a staffer, this whole Green New Deal thing was written because they wanted to speak to the layman. But then the layman went, what? Why are we going to, this doesn't make any sense. And so, okay, let me put it this way. I'm going to go out tomorrow morning. I'm going to walk out to my Chevrolet. I'm going to get in my Chevy. I'm going to start my Chevy. I'm going to drive down to the gas station. I'm going to fill it up with gasoline. I am not tomorrow going to say, Ocasio-Cortez said that my car is causing global warming, so I'm going to walk to the store. You know why? Because it's going to be 20 below zero tomorrow at my house. Okay? I want global warming. We need some global warming after this year, I tell you what. I mean, if there was a way I could puddle some cow farts and warm my house, that would be great. Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Might make some money off of that one. Ed, you know how I am. I'm always trying to start some new business. Let's go for that cow fart business. It's really pretty good. So high-speed electric rail. Okay, that's fine, but what are you going to use to build high-speed electric rail? When Burlington Northern was building their railway, they used a lot of, immigrant labor, but they were worried about building it efficiently, quickly, and for the least cost that they could. Okay, and I know there was a deal, especially chugging through Montana where I'm located, where for each mile of railway that Burlington Northern laid, the railway got 40 My cat is tearing up my chair. Stop that cat. For each mile of railway that Burlington Northern laid, the railway got 40 square miles of land.
Mm-hmm.
That's how many of these boom towns happened, especially across the Midwest, because they would offer, they'd have a gold claim, let's say in Virginia City, Montana, or Butte, Montana, and they would say, hey, everybody, there's some big, giant claim of natural minerals. We're going to give you discounted rates on land because we got it for building the railway. And they would advertise it everywhere. So everybody would flock to this, which would enrich the land which the railway went through. And in turn, they got cheap labor in order to build this said railway, which then progressed farther. Now, I mean, I know that's one small section, but the thing is when Ocasio-Cortez talks about high-speed rails, there is no longer the same abilities we had back then to build these cheap rail systems. Okay, because now we have to worry about all of your legalities involving worker compensation. You've got to worry about time clocks, hours. You've got insurance issues. You've got land management issues. So to build a project of this magnitude would not be private sector. It would have to go through an eminent domain process. So then you're seizing land. And then on top of that, you're using fossil fuels. You're using carbon emissions to build this railway.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to be net neutral in this railway? It's going to take you hundreds of years. But apparently the world is going to end in 12 years, according to Cortez. So are we going to have this railway built in the next 12 years? I don't think so. So, yeah.
Well, that is the plan, too. It's the plan, of course, is to go through and get the entire railway rebuilt in 12 years to go on a high-speed system, which is understandable. I mean, high-speed for passenger purposes, I don't think is a completely bad idea. The eminent domain that it would take to build it and the cost that comes with it, yes, I think is a bad idea. Excuse me. But to just actually have this here would not be a bad thing. We've got the technology to do it. I think it would be, at some point, if we could get the cost down enough to do it, not a bad thing. The problem is that it is going to cost a fortune, and there's going to be a lot of land seizure, especially in places like Montana and Wisconsin.
You need some sort of a public-private partnership, which you need some, I don't know, like large billionaire organization, maybe somebody who had involvement in politics, somebody who's well-known, well-liked across the Midwest. I don't know, maybe like a Trump. You'd need a Trump to build this rail system. Hey, interesting. So there's Ocasio-Cortez's foot. She needs to get Trump onto this New Deal and then pay him to do it. Then they would say, no, you can't do that. Anyways, long story.
Well,
that's how you do it.
It's interesting that the thing that most people bring up when they talk about this is the high-speed rail system, because that does seem to be one of the more flawed parts of this bill. Obviously, Senator Mazie Hirono was from Hawaii and giving the side eye to Cortez when she was talking about making air travel obsolete, because, I mean, how do you get from Hawaii to the U.S. without some sort of diesel fuel? Do you roll?
Green teleportation.
Yeah.
So you need to build a zero-emission teleporter because, see, most of this is based off of technology that we don't have yet. We don't know when we'll have it or what it'll cost. So we need to build a teleportation machine that runs off of cow farts and teleports you to Hawaii. I only keep coming back to that because that was literally in the frequently asked questions. And the other day, I'm watching a clip that was posted online to Tucker, and Tucker's talking to Ocasio-Cortez's, I can't remember who he was, like campaign spokesman, and he's sitting there saying, oh, no, none of that. All these things that were in there like, oh, well, if you don't want to work, you don't have to work, and we're still going to pay you. Mm-hmm. And he goes, no, that wasn't us. That was some other loony campaign. It was a misinformation campaign. And then it came out that it was them and that it was released. And they said, oh, that wasn't supposed to be released yet. See, that's how it is. If public opinion likes it, oh, yeah, perfect. This should have been released 10 years ago. public opinion didn't like it. Oh, nope, never supposed to be released. It was just shifting the narrative. It's a Saul Alinsky tactic. So, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, the thing with rail that got me was I actually saw a project like that, very similar to the one that was proposed on a nationwide level, just on a very localized level, fail flat on its face in a state that was really, really blue at the time. Remember, Wisconsin only went red for the 2016 election officially, but I think it was '08 or 10. I might have to look into that.
Wait, Paul Ryan is from a blue state?
Oh God, yes. But this is a very red district that Paul Ryan is. I'm in Ryanland. I don't know if
Right,
you know.
right.
Well, not it's not Ryanland anymore. It's Ryan
Used to
Style
be
Land.
Ryan Land.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep. Oh, man, I would never have guessed that Ryan was from a blue state. From
I
his policies.
I don't know where, but exactly. But from what I understand, Paul Ryan only lives like 10 miles away from here.
You know what? I knew you were a very, very wealthy, powerful, politically influential figure, Ed. So I knew you'd be hanging out with him. We'll see
Um,
you on the tennis courts. Let's get you guys, you and Paul Ryan. I'd like that.
well, it was just about a decade ago. There was a proposal in our state legislature to build, under public funding for public use, a high-speed rail system that only went from Madison to Milwaukee.
Oh,
And there was a lot of eminent domain that went along with that. Madison to Milwaukee
how
is
how
about
far is that?
70-ish miles, maybe less than that. I think it takes our shuttle because I work at a business in Madison that also has a branch in Milwaukee. That's the first stop. The first stop on the shuttle run that goes between the our stores is in our Milwaukee store. I think it takes them just a little bit over an hour to get from our store to the Milwaukee store. So it's about 70 miles, I think, to go Madison to Milwaukee. And that's
Hey,
all they want
tell
to do. They
everybody
wanted,
Ed is actually an astronaut. He's lying to you. He doesn't work at a store. Okay, he's been to Mars 3 times. Musk
Elon
and
Musk
him are
money. Yeah,
buddies.
there you go.
Yeah, yeah. See, so just don't be fooled by his demeanor. He's somebody influential. That's why I like him.
But the high-speed rail, it's not as popular as people seem to think it is, especially in when you're looking at middle class and middle America. I think one of the things that was realized almost instantly when they looked at the high-speed rail, it was supposed to be a commuter rail, so people could go from Milwaukee to Madison because there were more jobs in Madison at the time than there were in Milwaukee. But for the most part, when we looked at it, if you were to go on that schedule, first you'd have to be on the train schedule, and your work would have to work around that. And I don't know of a lot of businesses that would have done that. But for the reality of it, it was going to be subsidized, and only a few people are going to use it for tourism. I don't think that it had any possibility of being used for work. Even at an hour, most people would just rather drive from Madison to Milwaukee than they would ride the rail. I mean, yes, you could get a lot of reading or stuff done if you were riding on a train rather than driving, but I think
Well,
most
I don't
people
have the
like that
numbers in front.
freedom.
I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but Amtrak is essentially a moderately high-speed rail system that goes from Chicago to Seattle.
Hmm.
I mean, this whole length, and at least once a day, you can catch a train going in either direction, right?
Hmm.
At least once a day. Some places even more. But it's so heavily subsidized right now, especially that section. And I think Pennsylvania is facing the same thing. There's a huge subsidy for Amtrak right now. So if rail was really the vision of the future, why is Amtrak so subsidized? And I think part of it is because we live in an instant society where Big Macs dominate the scene, and we want our food now. We want our commuting now. We want our travel now. This hour-long podcast, half the people are going to be listening to it on fast forward just so they get through it, because everybody does everything instantly or quickly, or I mean, that's why you have a microwave. I have a microwave because I don't want to spend 30 minutes boiling a pot of water. So when it comes to high-speed rail, yeah, sure, it's going to be fast. We really want it, but there's always going to be something that takes that edge. And the amount of infrastructure that goes into planning and building a high-speed rail system will far exceed the actual use of that rail system. I mean, we're already seeing Musk and many other people. What's that Virgin Galactic guy? Branson. Branson's talking about having these tours into space. Well, what happens when you have a shuttle that can launch from Chicago to a dock and then in a matter of minutes get you to Seattle? I mean, that's coming. That's 20 years from now. So if we build this high-speed rail system now, 30 years from now, when we have a shuttle that takes you from Seattle to Chicago in 2 hours, you're going to take that, even if it does cost more money. I mean, that's what we do with airplanes all the time. If I needed to go to your house, I wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to jump on a train. I'd say, oh, I'm going to fly. It's that simple. I mean, most people fly because it's fast, it's convenient, and it's relatively inexpensive because Amtrak is just as much or close to it.
Yeah, and
that's my rant on rail. That's about it. Yeah,
well, I can take that a step farther, and I can understand that perfectly. The girl that I was in a relationship previously, she was from New England.
Love stories.
Yeah, she was. Oh, yeah. No, it wasn't a love story. Trust me. But she was from New England. I lived in New England myself, as you can see. I took some of the fandom back with me. We didn't meet in New England.
That's the only thing you brought back, though. See, she's still there.
No, she actually is here. We met after she moved here because she got a job in this area. But she was from New England, and before her and I started going out, she used to make the drive to go up to her parents from where we live now to New England, where they were from. I've made the drive from Kenosha to Walpole, Massachusetts before. 17 hours. I understand the difference, and yeah, there's a little bit of freedom to do it if you go and make the drive. I've often said if I go back to New England, I'd rather drive than fly, but the reality is, from Kenosha to Walpole was 17 and a half hours straight through. When her and I started going out, the couple times that we went out to New England, it was by plane. 2-hour plane ride from Chicago to Manchester.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't see rail taking over that, no matter how high speed it is.
Yeah. If you can get from Chicago to New York in 2 hours via rail, I mean, what's that distance? That's over 1,000 miles, right?
Yes.
From Chicago to New York. So, I mean, let's just theoretically say it was 1,000-mile distance from wherever to wherever. If you can get high-speed rail to a point where you're traveling at a speed of 500 miles an hour, let's say. So 1,000-mile distance becomes and you're not talking as the crow flies like a plane. You're talking over hills, twisty turns, and all that. Your speed is 500 miles an hour. A train derailing at 100 miles an hour is devastating.
Yes.
You're talking about track rebuilds. You're talking about
nobody survives.
No, hundreds dead. I mean, if you're an environmentalist, the environmental damage alone should scare you. Okay? Now we're talking 500 miles an hour. That train derails. You have 300 tons of steel flying through the air at 500 miles an hour and just taking out whatever it hits. And I know we don't like to talk about train wrecks, and that is kind of scary and whatever, but it could happen. And it probably will happen. I mean, we see train wrecks all the time. These things happen. Planes crash all the time. Nothing is assured. But what you want to do is you want to take your risk and you want to weigh it versus the reward. And I don't see the risk reward playing out there, honestly. But there's lots in the Green New Deal that doesn't make any sense. I mean, just like that. And
if the train derails at 500 miles an hour, that's the next step to the other big thing that everyone keeps talking about in the Green New Deal. It'll take out all those buildings and they'll be able to rebuild them with green new buildings. That's been the other sticking point that seems to stick in everybody that's talking about the Green New Deal's craw is the fact that the Green New Deal proposes that we tear down every single building in the country and rebuild them with energy-efficient, green, environmentally friendly buildings.
Do you know what would really help this? Like,
A train
I
flying
don't
through
know,
the air at 500 miles an hour?
a train flying through the air at 500 miles an hour. That would really help. Maybe like, I don't know, giant hurricanes caused by global warming. See,
Yeah.
maybe that would help. I mean, we could take care of Florida pretty easily, New England. So, see, maybe they just need to let global warming progress, and then we'll all be reset back to the Stone Ages, and then we can rebuild a green planet again. Right? Right? I don't know. I don't see any negatives there. I don't know.
I always have to wonder how many times Florida has been completely rebuilt from the ground up since it became a state. Because, I mean, from what I
Well,
understand from history, there was,
at least twice.
yeah,
Each time Jeb Bush was elected.
from what I understand from history, the Native Americans would not inhabit the Florida Peninsula because they knew the risk that was involved with being that. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I understand about Florida is that it was relatively uninhabited before white men came to this country.
It was relatively uninhabited before white men started retiring on the southern coast. And then Disney World was built. So, I mean, I think that was the tipping point for Florida. There was like some alligators, some guys that were eating the, dog-sized mosquitoes that flew around. They were just catching them, putting them on a stick and roasting them. And then all of a sudden, everybody was like, hey, I want to retire on the beach. Should we go to Texas? No, no. Let's go to that little panhandle that gets hit by the hurricanes. Yeah, that's the place to go. And then Miami appeared, and I don't know. There's a lot we could go into with Miami. I mean, the culture, the
The
food,
Dolphins.
the dolphins. Ugh, dolphins. The last good thing about Miami was Dan Marino. So then I hear like Dan Marino's going to get back into coaching, and I'm like, yes, all right, Dan Marino. And then I'm like, what happened to Dan Marino? That's about it. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Well, interestingly
well,
enough, we teased about this topic earlier, but that is not the only controversy that Alexandria Ocasio Cortez has been embroiled in this week.
yeah, dancing on the rooftops.
On the House floor, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez made a very interesting speech about campaign finance, calling herself the bad guy and insisting that anybody who would invest in a company and then make a law to get profitable off of it would be criminal. And suggested, of course, that there's nothing that's stopping the president from investing in a company and then making a law protecting it. Except the fact that the president doesn't make laws.
I I don't have much more to say to that because I have a Twitter post that went pretty far saying that similar thing, and that's about it. I mean, the president doesn't make laws. So when you talk about, well, this Trump guy, he likes gold toilet seats. What if, oh, what if he wanted everybody to have a gold toilet seat? And then he went to Congress and he said, hey guys, I just want to tell you, you need to give me gold toilet seats in every house. Congress would be like, shut up and get out of here. You sign the bills that we send you. That's how it works. Have you read the Constitution? And he'd say, not really. I don't need to. I'm the president. That's about it. That's all. I mean, that's how the conversation would go. Pelosi'd probably spit in his eye. Schumer would probably go out to the press and go, hey, he came in here and asked for gold toilet seats. And that's about it. That's how the president does not make laws. So Ocasio-Cortez's pointless, meaningless rant that went on and on for like 5 minutes on the floor, and she's asking these grilling questions like, should I go out and get somebody to give me money, and then I come in here and I make a law that says you need to give me more money? Wouldn't that be bad? And everybody's like, yeah, but we don't have to agree with you. We don't have to pass your law. There's only 300 of us. See, it doesn't make any sense because she could propose any bill she wanted. She could propose a bill that she gets to dance on the rooftop of Congress every week, okay? And the rest of the senators or representatives, in this case, the rest of the representatives have to say, oh, yeah, we think that is acceptable. We need that bill. See, it's erroneous what somebody like what one individual representative does. It's erroneous what the president does because it has nothing to do with what she's talking about. Kind of like my rambling little speech here that is just segmented and fractured and doesn't make any sense. It's irrelevant.
Well, see, and that's, I think, part of the danger that we've put, or the danger of the power that we've put onto the presidency, especially in the media's eye. And in reality, what Barack Obama seemed to want the presidency to be while he was in office, and what it seemed like the Democrats in Congress were trying to move to him. Ocasio-Cortez, I legitimately believe, has never read the Constitution and believes that our president is a monarch. I can't see any reason why she wouldn't believe
I think
that.
she hopes. I think she hopes that our president is Joseph Stalin or
Well,
something
yeah.
like that. I mean, some like Mao Zedong. I think that's what she hopes the president is, all wielding executive power by thumbprint on it, and it's law. But that's not how it is. That's not how it has been. That's not how it ever will be. And that's exactly it. As long as the Constitution is followed and the Supreme Court is held in a relatively neutral stance. That's a big part of it, is keeping politics out of the Supreme Court. Now, that'll never happen, never has happened, never will happen. But at least if the Supreme Court looks like it is neutral, then we're not going to put as much like the Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh says, I like beer, and suddenly he's a rapist. I mean, it was ridiculous. We politicized the court at that point. We turned it into a show. And if we have equal branches of government, the executive, and then okay, now I'm getting back into Ocasio-Cortez. She said, we have the executive, we have the Supreme Court, and we have, what was the last one? The book bodies or something like that. Do you remember that a couple of months ago?
I do.
She came up with she couldn't remember the three. Now I can't remember what she couldn't remember, but that's erroneous. That's my word of the day. Bing, bing, bing. We need some lights. Erroneous. All right.
Well,
anyways, on to the next, whatever.
The conversation that goes along with this, and especially with, Cortez is assuming the fact that the president is making all these laws and imposing these laws on the people, does speak to the amount of power that we as the American people have given the presidency in our minds, a branch of the government that was really intended by the Constitution to be the second most powerful branch of the government next to the legislature. The legislature was supposed to have all the power because they were supposed to represent the people. The president is only supposed to enact the laws and enforce them.
Well, and it was really the congressional House members that were supposed to have all the powers, because the senators weren't supposed to directly be elected by the people.
Mm-hmm.
The House members were supposed to essentially elect the senators. Senators were a secondary body, secondary governing power. So realistically, it was the House members, the Ocasio-Cortezes of the world that were supposed to have the power. But in the last 3 decades or so, they've negated their power. They've taken it away. They've given it to people like Barack Obama, who took executive orders to the extreme. And I mean, everything became an executive order. And I'm not against executive orders to an extent. But I mean, they were pushed. They were pushed. Every other day, if you look back, I mean, I can't remember. It was like 360 of them in his last term, which he was only in power for 4 years. I mean, this last term, it was 4 years. So 360 of them, that was like one every 4 days. I mean, the other couple of days he went golfing and went to some dinner. So, I mean, it was like, I got to go to work. Better write a new executive order. Well, even if it was 360 in the whole 8 years, that's still one every week or so, right?
Yeah.
5 years or 8 years, 360. Yeah. So, I mean, that's like every week he wrote an executive order. Maybe I'm completely wrong on that number. Maybe it was like 12. Okay. But I think it was like 360. I don't know. We can fact check me. MSNBC, go ahead, fact check it. I don't care. Calling them out. Calling you out, Wolf Blitzer. Fact check me. I'm going to fact check me right now. Anyways.
Well, the thing with that, too, is I didn't really start getting into politics as heavily as I did until the end of the George W. Bush presidency, but I don't remember ever hearing about executive orders before the Barack Obama presidency. And then, like you said, yeah, it was every 4 days Barack Obama was talking about another executive order. And I mean, we don't hear about the executive orders so much anymore unless there's something going on. And Chuck Schumer is taunting the president now. He made a show of his executive orders when he started out his presidency, but most of those were repealing Barack Obama era executive orders.
All right. So here, I actually pulled up the number because now I'm totally curious. So apparently a lot of people did executive orders, but and there were some huge numbers, but let's just go through a few. So Reagan, transformational president.
Mm-hmm.
He did, okay, so if we go back to Gerald Ford, 169, Jimmy Carter, 320, Reagan, 381, H.W. Bush, 166. So H.W. Bush, well, he was only in office for 4 years, too.
Yeah.
So Clinton, okay, so here's 8-year president. So Clinton did 364.
Mm-hmm.
George W. Bush did 291, and Barack was 276. Ooh, I'm getting my facts confused, but still 276 executive orders. Now, so most of Bush's were because of the war.
Mm-hmm. Which is
that was a majority of them, right? So Barack Obama's, they were ethics committee, reviews, depositions, exploratory committees, removing barriers to responsible scientific research involving human stem cells, stuff like that. I mean, there was a lot of establishment of the White House Office of Health Reform. That was in 2009. Chesapeake Bay protection and restoration. So there were a lot of, back to the keyword of the night, erroneous, strange things that he was passing via executive order. Adjustments of certain rates of pay. Anyways, let's get out of that. That's getting into the weeds there. But yeah, there were a lot of weird little things that were passed.
Well, with executive orders in mind, it's probably a pretty good time to move on to our next topic, of course, because we'll be talking about who the Democrats hope will be making the next set of executive orders.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to say scenes from a hat. I was going to get excited there because of your intro.
Yeah.
So,
the presidential field has been doing a little bit of shifting lately. Elizabeth Warren has moved herself out of the exploratory committee, and she has officially announced that she is going to run for the president after the card came out from when she applied to the Texas bar as a Native American. And of course, the other big news is that Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota has announced that she as well is going to be running for the presidency. Klobuchar had a little bit of a problem delivering her message because she claimed that we were going to have massive global warming in the middle of a Minnesota blizzard.
Pretty much. Pretty much. So I give either of those two. I guess I got to assume their gender. I assume they're women. Sorry if you're Klobuchar. If you're really not a woman or you don't identify as that, I apologize. And Warren, I'm not sure what you identify with anymore. But I give them both about a 1 in 1,024% chance that they'll win election. That's my prediction. That's my Vegas odds. I'll take that bet any day. Yep.
What does that put us up to now for people that are running for president on the Democrat side?
Oh, 90. Maybe 100.
Well, I know we got, what do we got?
Warren, Harris.
Yep.
Klobuchar.
Yep. Booker.
Booker. Barack Obama's third term. We've got, who else do we got? Oh, well, has Beto announced?
Beto is not announced. I know he just
Biden
had a rally
hasn't
today.
Announced, but he's like, yeah, Biden's like, oh yeah, I'm in it. Maybe not. So,
Julián Castro.
I don't know. I think we're at least 15.
Is it Castro or?
Castro.
Yeah. Julián Castro from Texas is planning on doing a
yeah,
run.
Castro. We having some internet difficulties. Am I glitchy? Am I all matrixy right now?
We
We're
had,
good to
yeah, a
go.
little bit, but it's fine. I also had a little bit of encoding overload I had to correct for earlier in the show, so great production
Hey, we
values.
just wing it here.
That's
Like
right.
you said, this really takes a lot of effort to look like a duct tape production. Tell you what. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. Anyways,
I
so
can't believe Warren
uh,
actually said that she is going to run for president after that card for the Texas bar came out. I thought for sure that was going to torpedo her. I think it might
I
still
thought
have, but
when I thought when she came out and goes, hold on a second. I'm just gonna grab a beer, a big beer. Just a second.
yeah, let's all talk about Native
All
American
right.
stereotypes.
Now I've got a beer here. See, it says beer on it. Hey, uh, oh look, my husband just walked in. Hi. Would you like a beer? That's about the point where I said, and she's running for president?
Uh,
What? Beer. Like that was her thing. And I'm like, wait a second. I thought we just went through this with Kavanaugh. I like beer. You're a rapist. And then she's like, I like beer. And I'm going to run for president next year. How's that sound? And everybody's like, what? I don't know. It's detrimental to our country that she doesn't run. Okay, we need her to run.
yeah.
Everybody needs a laugh.
What was it? Was it one of the late night guys? I think it was one of the English ones. I want to paraphrase what he said because for Warren, I want to find out where the campaign office is located. I want to know where to send a check on behalf of the American people that do not want her to be president but desperately want her to run.
That's about right. Yeah. Seriously. Like I heard Hillary was perhaps announcing, and I was like, thank the stars.
I think
Like,
Podesta
man,
said that that's not going to
ask.
happen, but I still don't know. I'm sure she wants to make the history books, and I
I think
think that's going to be
Podesta
a
should
lot of the
run.
driving force of this election is that it's going to be the people that want to make the history books.
Okay, so who do you think's the biggest problem 2020 for Trump on the Democrat side? Who could they run that would cause the most problems for him?
Michelle Obama.
No.
Yeah,
You think? You think she would cause the most problems?
the name recognition and the things that obviously everyone knows about them, they're going to try and make it a race thing and they're going to try and make it an Obama thing. And I think that would be the biggest. I think if Michelle Obama runs, we start saying Kamala who. And Kamala Harris was the one that I thought was going to be the biggest problem until I actually started doing some research into the woman and finding out what she was all about and what her history was all about.
So, uh, remember the drooling dweeb that did the response to the State of the Union last year? Kennedy?
Yes.
I think a Kennedy veto ticket is the worst.
You think?
I think if Kennedy ran, Kennedy's got massive name recognition. People idolize the Kennedys. They wouldn't even listen to him. He just went out and said, "Hey, I'm a Kennedy, and I'm going to take back America." I think people would go, "Whoa, a Kennedy!" And then he has Beto on the ticket. And Beto says, "I might be a Latino." And then you go, "Whoa, now that's a great ticket, a Kennedy and a Mexican." But I don't think Beto's actually either of those things. He just hopes he is. I mean,
Robert
his name's
Francis
Beto.
O'Rourke.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I don't know how you can get much more Irish than that. So yeah, but anyways, I think that, or if you had Kennedy and Michelle Obama as a sticker mate, but see, I think that might cause backlash because then they'd say, well, was Michelle Obama the vice president? You know, I think right now with this identity politics, they're in a pickle. They're in a big pickle
What
because no matter who they choose,
what about Kennedy Harris? Think about that one for a sec. I don't think Harris is going to make it very far. First
maybe
off,
if Harris was the actual candidate, like the presidential candidate, and Kennedy took a back seat and became VP, would a Kennedy want to be VP? I don't know. He drools a lot, so I mean that might be good. But I mean, then he'd get the name recognition. You know what I mean? I
Well,
think a lot of people strive for the days of Hoover and Kennedy.
mhm.
Like the olden days. Like we're a nostalgic country nowadays. I think that's where we're at.
Well, the problem with putting Harris at the top of the ticket, A, is she was a prosecutor before that. There have been lawyers that have been president, but there's never been a prosecutor as president. And she was
I
hard
gotta
on
stop
crime.
you there.
Go ahead.
I swore I was just about to just drop this cup right here. I thought you were going to say prostitute,
No.
and so it caught me off guard there because of all these allegations.
Yeah,
I don't know about. I know Harris was a prosecutor. I know people are saying she slept her way to the top.
hmm
Uh, I don't know how much are founded, but I don't think people like prosecutors.
there's that. And there's the other big detail that I think is going to cause Harris problems as she goes along. Look at Harris's. First off, her legislative record is non existent right now. We have nothing to compare her presidency to because she's been in Congress, she's been in the Senate for 2 years, and she's been in the minority party in the Senate for her entire career. There's no legislation that's tied to her at all.
That might be good though, as a Democrat.
Well, that could be.
I mean, what are they going to bash her on? They can't say, "Oh, look, she passed some legislation that allows, you know, 72-month babies to be killed." I don't know. You know what I mean? I mean, she can't bash her on any of that. They've only got to run on her record, and she has no record. And I mean, if Republicans retorted with, "Well, she doesn't have any experience," then she'd say, "Well, Trump doesn't have any experience," and we'd say, "But he's Trump."
Yeah. The other thing is that Kamala Harris has never run against a Republican. I found out while I was doing research on her for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, because California is blue on blue.
Yeah,
You
and
know, one of my good friends is Omar Navarro. He's running against Maxine Waters
mhm.
in California. I mean, it doesn't always look so good, but anyways. So, you know, next year, so his advisor is Roger Stone. Stone's been in the news a lot lately,
Mhm.
but between Stone and him, they've developed a strategy for him to run on the Democrat ticket in a Democrat state. So they're going to have two Democrats running against each other. They think the simple fact that he was a Republican on the ticket, that was a negative attribute to him in Waters' crazy loony district. I mean, they think that they had internal polling saying 54% did not like Waters, and then only 30% voted for Navarro. So something there was off.
Mhm.
I mean, she still got 50 something percent of the vote, but there was still some issue.
Did Omar make it to the top two on the ticket? Because I know that's the way that California's elections are structured. It's not. It's
So
not parties. It's whoever the top two primary contenders are, no matter what their party.
right, so it was Omar and Waters
Okay.
in the general, but again, he only got 30% or so. I think it was because there really wasn't a whole lot of competition against Waters. Other Democrats were like, well, we don't want to run against Waters. She had the big money back in her, or the big little money. She said, I only have a few donors. And everybody went, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, and that's a major theme that keeps coming along with this upcoming presidential election is Warren has said it, Harris has said it, and Gillibrand has said it. They are going to run non-PAC elections. They are going to just run complete grassroots campaigns. And they're announcing that on CNN, which is going to give them all kinds of free airtime to give their message, obviously. I don't know if there's such a thing as a grassroots campaign, especially for Democrats anymore. What would you think on that?
I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh,
The media's in your
so
corner. That's my biggest thing. So that's free advertising right there.
there is no such thing as a no pack. Okay. Because the Democrat Party itself is a form of a pack, right? So if you're running on the Democrat ticket, you have a large organization behind you that has money supporting you. Okay. So you can say you're Bernie and you can say, I have all of these people supporting me. They've all donated $2, and every cup of coffee they buy, they're giving me another buck so they can keep funding my campaign. But that doesn't work unless you have a large chunk of self-funding to begin. You're going to get media advertising, of course, but you're going to have groups. I mean, you're going to have unions, for example, that say, okay, everybody in our union, we really like this person. We're not going to tell you to donate to their campaign, but we're going to say you should probably donate to their campaign. You know, there's going to be peer pressure and large media pressure. So it might not be the traditional, it might not be the NRA lobby that's sending this much money to this candidate, but you are going to still see these large organizations of people, groups of individuals who all team together and donate their maximums, their limits. I mean, I don't know. And then on top of that, you're going to have somebody come up in a few years that goes, you know what? Who cares about PAC donations? And just blows them out of the water and takes all the PAC donations. PACs are going to put their money somewhere. They're not just going to hold on to it because Warren says she's not going to take it. If Beto says he's going to take it and Warren says he's not, Beto's getting the money.
They can buy Beto.
Money, right. And money doesn't, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, he'll be Robert Francis if you want him to be. But money doesn't always buy everything. I mean, look at Jeb Bush in the last election. He had so much money. Jeb Bush was a monstrously funded candidate, and I think he was asleep most of the time. I mean, he should have had, what's his name? Mike Lindell. I mean, the My Pillow guy, getting him a nice pillow for bed so he could sleep, have a good night rest. So when he showed up to the debate, he wasn't like, my plan is I am a Bush. That's about it. That was Jeb's campaign, except for the exclamation point. Jeb! I mean, that was the most exciting thing. So you'd think that a guy who lives in a state with alligators and boa constrictors would be a little bit more exciting, but he wasn't. It was disappointing. Yeah. Go Rubio.
Well, that's where we are on that. But if the government is shut down, then we don't have to worry about who's going to be the president theoretically. But now it doesn't look like happen? Now it doesn't look like the government's going to be shut down anytime soon. Just recently happened, like right before we started recording, Congress came to a resolution for much less money than what the president asked for. I think it was like $1.3 billion. They came to an agreement on it, and this looming shutdown that we're looking at looks like it is not going to happen, at least from Congress's side. We still have to wait to see what the president is going to say about it, and we only have until Friday, and most people are going to be hearing this on Tuesday morning. So,
well, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that needs to be done, Trump does one more thing in his presidency that'll make me happy. That is line item vetoes. He needs to be able to go through and say, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this, I do like this. I mean, if we're talking about holding people hostage, as everybody claimed in the last big shutdown, he says, oh, well, you're not going to get your payments from the IRS or whatever. He should be able to say, yes, I'm going to fund that section of government. I'm going to fund this section of government. These omnibus bills that shut down certain sections but keep other sections open and are overcomplicated and overpowering, that is what is causing this issue. Now, granted, it's great for when you want to get something done. You could say, hey, I'm shutting everything down if you don't do what I say. Gives the executive branch a little bit more power. But if he had line item vetoes, he could go through and say, hey, I'm going to fund whatever, food stamps or something like that, the SNAP program, and I'm not going to fund the payments to the Dominican Republic to study cockfighting. I don't know. I mean, if he could go through and decide this versus that, that would be much more beneficial, I think, for the American people. And that is what we need. The wall, we need funding for it. We need to make sure that we can secure our border. And I'd be okay. The problem is we're fighting over a couple hundred miles of wall. We're not fighting over 2,000 miles like the Democrat media tends to claim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the 5.7 billion only funds a few hundred miles. Granted, crucial 100 miles,
Mm-hmm.
but what we need is we need some sort of a clear-cut barrier. I know between me and Canada, which is only about 100 miles away from me, if I drive straight up to the border, there is a wide 20-foot swath of trees completely cut down. And I know Border Patrol agents follow that swath of trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's fairly well regulated because there's not only our guys on our side guarding it, there's Canadians on the other side guarding it. So you have twice the amount of patrol.
Mm-hmm.
So if we had a way to secure the border, partial fence, partial wall, and then actual security, maintaining that border at all times, an actual divisive barrier, that's really what we need.
Well, and that's the thing that keeps being brought up too. It's when we stop talking about going a concrete wall from sea to shining sea and going into strategic barriers of steel fence and steel slats, of course, in key areas that aren't guarded by a natural border like the Rio Grande or something like that. I mean, the conversation should have changed completely, but the media hasn't changed the conversation at all about any of this. We're still talking about having the Great Wall of Trump across the southern border.
Which I really wouldn't argue with if we could do it for a reasonable cause.
I don't think there's any such thing to... I would love to see something like that, and I made the argument for that when I made my video on how to build the wall. I made that argument because we could use that as the fourth wall to have detention facilities. We could put courtrooms in there so we could have judges right there to take care of asylum right away. There's so many things we could.
Put solar panels on the roof and power the country.
There's so many things we could have done with a gigantic concrete barrier like that. But the reality of that is, once you get out towards California especially, and that's a place where you definitely would need that much wall out there, a concrete wall versus 9 on the Richter scale earthquakes is not a good thing.
Yep. So then you start getting into structural integrity issues. Mm-hmm. So then we just need a giant 25-foot Jello mold that can withstand any earthquake. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to climb up a 25-foot stack of Jello, but I can't imagine it's easy.
Do you think anybody's tried to do that?
No, but I think that would be a great way. And then if you're lost in the desert, we don't have to put watering fountains out for you anymore. You could just eat some of our wall. We just replenish it. That's the solution. We just need a giant Jello mold. There we go.
Refrigerated.
You don't have to refrigerate Jello. What's it going to do? Melt?
Yes.
I've never seen Jello melt. Jello melt. Have you ever? Okay, so you get those little pudding cups. They have Jello cups, and you're eating it. I've never had it melt on me. Does it melt? Maybe it does. Maybe. I don't know.
It never lasts that long for me once it's out of the refrigerator.
That's the problem. See, we'd have hordes of people on the border guarding it because they'd be eating the Jello. See, so I don't know. I think that Jello mold is the solution. You can't climb it, can't get through it. We'd have tourism. I mean, it would be a spectacle. If you've ever seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, he makes a whole house in a Jello mold. So I think that's the solution.
What about the Great Wall of Jello shot?
Ooh, yeah. We could have it sponsored by Smirnoff. And they could pay for half the wall. So Trump just needs to come out and say, the wall will be paid for by Smirnoff Ice. And everybody will be like, all right. I mean, Kavanaugh would be in line. Warren would be in line. All these beer-drinking fools in power would be in line. Would be getting their train on. Ocasio. So there we go. Jello mold. The Jello shot wall. All right, we're off topic. What were we talking about? Trains. Amtrak, trains, Ocasio, Jello mold. We are on
the wall.
The Great Wall of Trump.
Yeah.
So shutdown, I think that the shutdown uh, probably will not happen. I think regardless of what comes to Trump's desk, he will sign it. I think that he is pushing for funding right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if he gets, let's say, 1.7 billion, he signs it, he takes the money, then he goes over, declares a national emergency, and says 1.7 billion is not enough. Border Patrol say they need more. Here's another 5, 8, 10 billion. We get it done that way. There's a little bit of public backlash. It only lasts 6 months. I think the biggest question right now, though, is what happens when a federal judge goes after that and stops or limits some sort of executive order or even attempts to. I mean, it's supposed to go straight to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
But if it goes to some federal appellate court, because for some reason these things end up going to, and it gets hit, then it goes to the Supreme Court. Will Ruth Bader Ginsburg show up for work, and will it be overturned? I mean, we've seen Kennedy in recent weeks side with the Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a Kennedy. So, yeah, I mean, there we go. Where is Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Where
Have
is?
we seen her?
Do you think Trump signs off on the limited? Well, yeah, you just said he signs off on the limited
He's going to sign
amount.
off on it. He's got to. He's got to because he's going to keep the government going because right now we're in the middle of tax season.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of his crucial points of legislation. If that gets halted at all, it's going to be devastating. So I've already seen a bunch of articles of people saying we're not getting back what we thought we would because they didn't claim enough or whatever. I think right now Trump needs to shine as far as tax legislation goes. And so he will sign whatever hits his desk, regardless of what's in it. He will take whatever money they give him. He will use that to the best of the abilities, and then he will force through the issue further later on. Democrats will claim the victory. Trump will then say, you didn't get a victory. I still got money for my wall. If it comes through executive order or emergency funding, that's how it's going to go. Somehow he's going to get the money. I don't think he can back down out of this one.
Well, see, it's interesting to me to think about the. You had said something about the Ninth Circuit going on and blocking the emergency funding. I don't know if the Ninth Circuit has grounds to stand on to do that. And hear me out when I say this, because I think that's the reason that the Democrats are caving on partial funding right now and giving into some of that. You have to look around at some of these more blue districts that some of the Democrats are coming out of when they're making this. Caving at all anything to Trump right now is a recall offense. It's an offense that means that they will not get reelected the next time through and they will get primaried for it. So
So,
something's got to have them spooked to the point that they're willing to face the primary in order to make sure that this doesn't go the other direction.
so areas like mine where we have 70% of Montana generally votes either swing or Republican,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have a very small Democrat percentage. Yet, we have a Democrat governor.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Democrat senator. We had a really close election for a Democrat representative.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because we are a red state. People consider us a solid red state, but we veer purple because of some of our representation. Now, I think that people like, for example, our governor's on his last term. We're pretty certain that that's going to swing red next year. Our senator, however, John Tester, has fought with Trump over and over and over. And that battle is going to stay heated because I think people like him are going to be in a position where they either side with Trump as Trump gains popularity, which I think I read something like he's at 52% or something, according
Yeah.
to Rasmussen.
Yeah, that's
So
insane.
as he gains popularity, this time in Obama's presidency, he was at like 48%.
Mm-hmm.
So Trump might have 5 points on him by now. I don't know. But
After a massive shutdown, too. That's insane to me.
again, it's because people really want some sort of a repose, whether it be a pause in the shutdown or a pause in the government, whether it be a restriction in the government. Um, the American West is still fairly free. I mean, I generally could consider myself pretty self-sufficient out here. I don't need the government for much. And I think there's a lot of people that are in my same boat. You need it for roads and bridges and all that. But there's a lot of libertarians who are, or at least closet libertarians, who believe, well, the government should handle what's necessary. And that's it. There's a limit to them. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these senators that are going to have to sway more libertarian, limited government, or else go full socialist. We're going to take care of you 100% Ocasio-Cortez, you see. And that's going to be the big dichotomy coming up here, whether we want restrictionist small government or this massive monstrosity. And I think more of the restrictionist people are the ones that are for the shutdown. They're more for this. Let's slow down the government and see what happens. I personally didn't even know it was shut down. I wouldn't have known if the paper hadn't told me. Mm-hmm. I have a national park out my back door, Glacier National Park. Okay, it's wintertime. We don't go there in the wintertime. Nobody does. Okay, there's glaciers in Glacier Park. Who'd have thought? Okay, I didn't notice it at all. Yeah. Yellowstone, right down the road, they have some sleigh rides. I guess they were delayed. But I really didn't. I wouldn't have known unless somebody had said anything. And I think a lot of people were more scared. It was a lot of fear mongering. I mean, were you affected?
No.
No, that's it. I think 800,000 people that were affected by it were kind of sad because they were government employees. Mm-hmm. But which way were they voting anyways?
Yeah, exactly.
I think a majority of them were voting blue. And maybe that's an overgeneralization, but I think that they anticipated the bad before it even happened. So I don't think that the shutdown really affected approval rating. I think it might have increased it, if anything. It just showed that Trump had balls. And then to open it back up and say, hey, 3 weeks, or I'm 3 weeks or I'm doing it again, it shows that he's willing to compromise. He's willing to accept, hey, I can take a step back. I can accept defeat or kind of a pause. Can you? And they're not. They're not compromising. They're not willing to work with it. So, yeah.
Well, I've got one more topic out here. I know we're starting to run a little bit long here, but I think we can.
I don't know. I don't have a watch. Oh, I do have a watch. What's your topic?
I had one on the bubble here in case we had the time to do it here. I wanted to take some time and talk a little bit more about the blackface controversy that came out of Virginia. That was just starting on last week's episode of Ed's World, so Robert and I got to touch on it a little bit, but now so much more has come out, including an accusation against the lieutenant governor and another accusation against the next person in line. So, as you teased at the beginning of the show, nobody knows who's the next in line for the Virginia
I think
governorship.
The next in line is the Roanoke dog catcher. I don't know. I mean,
it actually is defined as the next person in line would be the head of the House of Delegates, the Speaker of the House of Delegates for Virginia, who is
the Republican guy.
Yep.
Yeah, GOP guy. See, now wouldn't that be a twist? But I guarantee that if that happened, which Northam's doing good, okay? He's pulling a Ken Starr, Bill Clinton move where he's like, look, I did it, but I'm not resigning. I don't know about I've never seen that blue dress. I mean, that's kind of Northam right now. He's like, yeah, I saw the picture, but we went to the dry cleaner, that sort of thing. I mean, did you see the picture of the pants? Like, there's the guy in the Northam pictures wearing the checkered pants.
Yeah.
And then they show a guy leaning up against a car, and he's wearing the same checkered pants.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait.
How many pairs of those checkered pants were going around in the 80s?
I mean, maybe that was super popular. That was the hip thing to wear, but I don't really buy it. I don't know. But I don't know. I see Northam is doing remarkably well. He is being a perfect Democrat, okay? He gets hit with a bunch of scandals. He says, look, guys, you know what I've done for this state. look how I have 10 black friends that will vouch for me. It's what he's saying. He did. He actually came out with some friend of his. He's like, my black buddy over that guy right there. His name is Jamal. Look at him. He is my friend. And everybody was like, so what? And he's like, no, seriously, like, look at, he's my friend. He says that I'm not a racist. And everybody's like, who cares? You wore blackface. Like, that was you. It's a double-edged sword because either he goes down
Mm-hmm.
like an Al Franken and walks,
Mm-hmm.
or he stays in power. They fight it out. He gets primaried and loses next year. But that sets the table because now all we have to do, any Republican gets in any sort of trouble and the Democrats can't say, get out. They can't.
No, that's completely understandable. And that's anywhere in the
Steve
country
King,
from that.
Steve King.
Yep.
Steve King was kicked off of every panel for his racial comments. Ilhan Omar today had to apologize for her anti-Semitic comments. I don't know that, it was just a bullet point I think I saw earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but she hasn't been kicked off of any of her sub panels. Now, the hypocrisy. I mean, then you add Northam into this, and you add the lieutenant governor who he's facing accusations just like Al Franken,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not stepping down.
Right.
If these guys don't start stepping down, the jig's up. I mean, the Democrats' attack game is gone. And then what?
Well, I looked at this. I got a little bit tinfoily when I started actually looking at this. I know, obviously, we were celebrating the idea of the full birth abortion from New York State, rather, and then this was being passed down to Virginia as well, including the afterbirth abortion that came out of Virginia. And then all of a sudden that this happened, there's a part of me deep down that thinks that when you look at something like the full birth abortion, I think the Democrat Party looked at that and said, okay, we have officially gone too far. We got to rein this guy in. Hey, let's put this picture out of the guy in blackface. Obviously, no Democrat in the world is going to be able to stand up on an abortion bill, or against an abortion bill, rather. Their hands are tied by Planned Parenthood. They could never come out and say, okay, this is too far. This has gone too far. We need to turn around and go back. They can't do that. So they had to manufacture this crisis. But then these other two crises came up in their place, and now they have no idea what to do.
Well, I think that obviously this was some sort of a staged political hit.
Mm-hmm.
It came out when it did for a reason. But you know what? Whoever released it, whether it be the RNC, the DNC, whoever it was that released this, did it, and they expected Northam to either resign or go away. I mean, this was like a 1998 Hillary Clinton jab. You shut your mouth or else. That was exactly what this was.
Yeah, that's where I went with the tinfoil on that, too. That's exactly what I thought that was.
And it's interesting because they expected him to either get out of office, go away, hide in the shadows. And instead, he just became the gift that kept on giving. I mean, he's like, oh, no. That picture, that wasn't me. I was in the other picture. The other blackface picture, that was me, not this one. I'm not that racist.
I was Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I was the Michael Jackson. Do you want to see me do the moonwalk? No, really. You really do, don't you?
That's not appropriate.
And his wife's like, don't do it. Don't you do it, Ralph. Don't you do it, Ralph. Don't you? And he's like, oh, come on. You want to see me? I'll see you afterwards, Jim. And Acosta's all happy just because I mentioned Acosta. He's going to pee his pants because he loves himself. Anyways, so for the most part, I think that they expect Northam to go away quietly, slink into a corner, and die. But he didn't. He rose to the occasion. And, him, like many of the other Democrats before him, they're becoming champions. And I really like him. I think he needs to become the new face. We need to promote him. We need to let him just talk all he can, all the time. him and Okashia need to go on a speaking tour, okay? Because they keep stepping on their own feet, and it's fantastic. Love it. Love it. We need to keep him in talking. So, yeah. Yeah, I think it was some sort of a political hit job. I think he was attacked. Sorry, boohoo. I don't have too many hurt feelings because our guys go down all the time. And some of them actually, like Steve Scalise, go down realistically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They actually get hit. And we have really impactful powers working right now, and that's polarizing this country. And things like this just show that we can be divided on an issue, but we can see through that issue and see, hey, this guy's just garbage. I think everybody on both sides of the aisle right now feel that way. And maybe that's my bias talking, but I don't know. But, yeah.
Well, we are at 75 minutes right now. I think it's time to...
Oh, my God. I don't ever shut up.
I think it's time for us to finish out with the last question that I have for you, obviously, and we'll throw the announcements out for the end of the show and get the heck out of here. We like to end Ed's World on a positive note, on a non-political topic, because there's so much anger, there's so much hatred in politics right now, so...
Anger.
Tell us something that's going on in your life that has nothing to do with your business or politics right now. It could be a hobby, a video game you've tried out, a new CD you like.
Well, you said no anger, so I guess boxing is out of the question. I'm working on my house. I'm remodeling my house. My wife and I are getting remarried. We're doing a re-up. That's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. I like that.
You don't really realize how much goes into a wedding until you've done it a few times. And I'm not like Big Lou, that commercial guy. It's like, I'm on number 2. I'm on number 1. We've just had to do this a few times, to get it, keep it moving. But we're doing a 1920s themed wedding at a local, historical mansion that's here in town coming up this spring. It's going to be a pretty cool event. We just talked to a big hotel that's here. It was built in like the 1910s. So anyways, the whole theme of the wedding is the roaring 20s. So we're going to have champagne flutes with champagne, and we're doing it for a really reasonable cost because I'm Mr. Penny Pincher. Okay. Yeah. So I'm like, Mr. DJ guy, you want 150? How about 75? And he says, no. And I say, how about I buy you dinner too? And he goes, okay, buy me dinner. I'll do it for 75, so we're doing it for really reasonable amounts and keep going. So I'm remodeling my house, planning a wedding. That becomes your hobby at that point.
Well, for the 20s, I might actually might have to plan a trip out to Montana to go and see that because I love 20s culture.
And it's going to be a blast. I tell you what, we have a lot of stuff kind of scheduled and planned, and it's going to be really fun. We're going to have hors d'oeuvres and it's, well, now that the more I think about it, the more it's going to be, the funner it's going to be. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I don't have too many hobbies because I'm always going. I'm always busy. And then I live in the wintertime most of the year. So it's like my hobbies become shoveling snow.
Yeah.
And
I get that.
And yeah, that's about it. Shoveling snow and thinking about whether I'm going to shovel snow. And I've watched this new show lately called Life Below Zero. It's fantastic. It's all these guys in Alaska that are like, we're cold. And I'm like, me too. We relate. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my life. I watch Life Below Zero, live in Life Below Zero, plan weddings and hope they happen. And yeah, that's it. Went to a couple of Trump rallies last year. They were fun. So, but that's political. So happy notes. All right.
Well,
close it out.
Well, thanks for swinging by and having this conversation with me. It was a good conversation. We got some good talk out of it. Before I close the show, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter at RealJake1776, or just go to freedomscoop.com or find Freedom Scoop on Twitter or Gab or Parler or wherever you get your Freedom Scoop. We're on all of them. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe we're not. Probably not because I was kicked off of Facebook because they said I was a Russian bot. Literally, I'm a Russian bot. So beep boop beep in the as the bots say. Anyways, yeah. So that's where you can find me at.
And that'll all be linked in the description below. Thanks for taking the time to listen to Ed's World, everybody. Next week, it looks like we're going to have Wyatt Birkenhoff come on the show. He's got a YouTube show called Roundtable Discussion. So he's used to having these multiple person discussions. It's going to be a good time, I think. He does some good work over on YouTube. So make sure that you look up Roundtable Discussion and go and have a look at his channel. And while you're there, if you're listening to this on the audio platform, have a look over at my YouTube channel, J. Edgar. And if you like what you hear, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. As Jake said, make sure you take a look over at the Freedom Scoop. He's got a lot of good content over there. There's some good writers, and this show also appears over on the Freedom Scoop right now. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to take our show on the go, remember, we are on all audio platforms: Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you find your podcasts, you can find Ed's World. Thanks for tuning in.
Ed's
We'll
World,
see you next
Ed's World, Ed's World, Ed's World. Oh, sorry, I had to screw up your intro there.
Thanks for taking the time to tune in. We'll see you next week. Jake, you have last word.
Ed, you have the comms. Have a good night.
Take care,
That's
everyone.